Have you ever heard of the American Plan? Because I hadn't. And honestly, I was shocked that I made it to 35 years old without ever learning about it. Many of us aren't taught that during World War I, the government was trying to stop the spread of venereal diseases among soldiers. And that sounds reasonable, right? But when I started digging into what actually happened under the American Plan, I found something very different. Women suspected of prostitution or sometimes simply suspected of being sexually active could be detained by authorities. Not convicted, not necessarily charged with a crime, just suspected. And once they were detained, they could be subjected to invasive medical examinations to determine whether they had a sexually transmitted disease. Now, these weren't voluntary exams, and you couldn't say no. The women being examined weren't patients seeking care, they were detainees. And if officials determined they had a disease, they could be confined in institutions until the government decided they were no longer a risk. The part that really struck with me wasn't just that this happened, it's who it happened to. Because men were also spreading these diseases. Soldiers were part of the same system, but the overwhelming focus of enforcement was on women. Women were treated as the problem that needed to be managed. And the more I learned about it, and the more familiar it started to sound. In my last video, HB 1232, Roe versus Wade, and the politics of controlling women, I talked about the Comstock Act and the long history of restricting women's bodily autonomy. I thought I understood the history, then I found this. A period in American history where women could be detained, forcibly examined, and confined under the language of public health and protection. And it made me realize something. When people talk about controlling women's bodies as though it's a new debate, they're ignoring a lot of history. Because this isn't really a story about World War One. It is a story about what happens when the government decides that women's bodies are the problem and they need to be managed. If you've never heard of the American Plan before, neither had I. And that's exactly why I made a full video about it. You can watch the full episode of Unsavory History on my YouTube channel.